Everybody, I got a lady. Ooh, man, I called her. She said, hey, I don't know. I got a lot of stories, but let me let you know. And then I called her. She said, hey, let me let you know. She put me in touch with a guy because she know everybody in her area. Very well respected sister. All right, mind you, she a strong lady. And he put me in touch with a few people. And then I called again. I said, please, come on my show. And she said, all right, I'm ready. And she's on my show. I'm so excited. I don't know what to do. I was really looking forward to this interview. Because I know she's going to give it to you straight, no chaser. You own strong inspirations, everybody. You know who I am? I'm Anthony Brogdon. I'm just an ordinary guy who come up with some questions to try to keep the dialogue going, to let you know about this Black history, American history, and here we go again. And so I really want you to hit the subscribe button on the channel. Let me know who's watching and that kind of thing there. And then hit the like button on this video because she's going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. Watch out. I'm telling you, watch. Hit the notifications bell because then you get a ding about the next videos that's coming up. And when this one comes out, you can be the first to watch it. And you're going to want to watch it. I promise you that. And then tell somebody about strong inspirations. Come on, my friends, don't keep this to yourself. Spread the word. Strong inspirations. It's easy, and it's just you sit back and you watch it, one here, one there, and you just follow me. I'm jamming. And then what I want you to do is watch my movie. Come on, people. Yeah, my sales is up. I can feel it. My Amazon and whatnot, and it's about the rise of Black business in America. Slaves that went to college. You can't hold us down forever. And even when you thought you were holding us down, we was tricking you, and we was getting it on back then days. The movie talks about that, right? And come on, it's called Business in the Black. I then wrote the book titled Black Business Book. The movie got interviews with people who family owned the business in the early 1900s. The book don't have the interviews, understandably, but it's got more facts. I got over 200 facts in this book. The last fact is about Motown Records, because my book ends in 1960, and Motown was started in 59. All right? The book and the movie both are on Amazon. Come on now, click on it. And they reasonably priced. I ain't gonna tell you how much, but they reasonably priced because I'd rather you have it than me. And so I want you to do that for me, my friends. I got a sister on here. She's about to come on in 1 second. And I'm so happy she's on my channel because she's a strong sister, and strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. Oneness, nobility, and grace. That's strong. Sister, introduce yourself. Let's get it on.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeannie Harriet, and I am the chairperson of the South Carolina African American Heritage Commission. The South Carolina African American Heritage Commission was created in 1993 by the South Carolina General Assembly for the identification and preservation of African American history and culture in the state of South Carolina. I was appointed in 1993 by Governor Carroll Campbell, and I am the current chairperson.
Man, I got the chairperson on my channel. Watch out now. Let me ask you this. How did they, are you from, I guess, originally from South Carolina?
I call myself a Carolina girl. I was born in Wilmington, North Carolina. But my parents moved back to South Carolina, which is their home, when I was about 2 years old. So I grew up in South Carolina. I am born and raised.
How you like, is Black history or that kind of thing in your background?
My grandfather, and his brothers and cousins were all sharecroppers. and they decided to buy their own land. And from what I can understand, my great grandfather was a farmer who bought his own land, and there was some subsidies for farmers during that time. He went to the courthouse to get his subsidies, and he fell dead on the courthouse steps. But of
Oh
course, that
my God.
didn't keep the family from maintaining the property.
And he felt that at the courthouse.
At the courthouse, yes.
Oh my God. And but then that didn't mess the lamb up. The land
That
stayed in
didn't
the
have
family.
anything to do with who we are.
Yeah.
Um, so his sons persisted, and that was my great grandfather. His name was Irvin Bradley, and my grandfather was Mingo Bradley, who was his son.
Now that did any of them go to college or something like that? Did your grandfather go to college?
No, as a matter of fact, as far as I can trace back, on my maternal side, in my generation, I am the first college graduate.
And but they instilled a sense of education and the yearning for education in you and your brothers
Exactly.
and sisters.
My father, and on my paternal side, my father was one of 13 children. His mother died when he was 3 years old, and
Hmm.
he was raised by an aunt. Um, he only went to the fourth grade, but his determination was that all of his children would be educated. So when my father died, he was a chemical engineer
Really?
by trade, not by education.
Yeah.
He learned the trade because of the company that he worked for. So education was always an important thing. He would say to us, our only job was to go to school, get good grades, and do our chores at home.
Did when you grew up, if I may say, did you know about picking cotton? Yeah, because it was
I picked
sharecroppers.
enough cotton in my day until one day I decided, this is not for me. And my father never wanted his children to be cotton pickers. He never wanted us to do that. Of course, my sisters and brothers and I, we picked cotton and we worked in tobacco. We did not live on a farm. People think that everybody who lives in the South lived on a farm. We didn't live on a farm. I never lived on a farm. I've always lived on a street with sidewalks, were they dirt sidewalks, but I've never lived on a farm. But during the time when I was growing up, local farmers would come into town to get workers. And so teenagers, as we were, would always go work on the farms. And there were a bunch of teenagers on my street. Finally, my father said to my mother, stop making them go because it costs me more for them to go to work than they bring home by the time I finished buying them lunch. So, yes, I picked cotton. I worked in tobacco. What else did we
Now
do?
let me stop here. What is tobacco? How do you work in tobacco? What did you do?
Well, tobacco grows in a field. It has to be cropped and brought into to a space where they can sell it. So the at that when I was growing up, the men usually were croppers. So they went in the field and took the leaves off of the stalks, and they brought them to what was the tobacco barn. And the women would string the tobacco on sticks, and then it had to and put the in the barn to be cured. Well, teenagers, as I was a young girl, we were what we call handlers. We would put the tobacco in with would take three leaves, put them together, and hand them to the women who were stringers, and they strung them to this stick, which would go into a barn to be cured by fire, and then it was sold at the tobacco market to make cigarettes and other tobacco products.
Did you ever smoke or chew tobacco?
No, no smoking was ever allowed in my household. I don't know. I mean, and nobody in my family that I knew, my immediate family, chewed tobacco. I knew men and and women who chewed tobacco, but nobody in my household ever smoked cigarettes or chewed tobacco. My father used to call himself smoking a cigar. I can never remember the cigar being lit just hanging out of his mouth. I mean, Prince Edward cigars, he had them around, but I never saw them lit. He just had them hanging out of his mouth. And so our house, there was no drinking or smoking in our house. He never smoked. Even if he smoked a cigar, he never smoked it in the house.
Yeah. Do white kids do that stuff too? That when you're growing up, do they work in the field and pick the tobacco because they need the money too? It's just all black kids?
Listen, all people were poor. I mean, people who were poor, yes, white kids, they didn't do it with us because basically we worked for black farmers. And of course, white kids probably worked for white farmers. Occasionally we would work for a white farmer, but basically we worked for black farm. There were lots of large black farm owners in our community.
Is that right? Okay. And does some of them end up becoming, or as you might know, very noted and wealthy in their own right? Some of the black farmers.
Well, maybe not wealthy in terms of what today is, but yes, they became successful, I would say, and were able to maintain a style of living based on having a farm.
As you said, your father was an engineer. That gave him another set of status as a black man, didn't it?
Well, they didn't really call him an engineer. He worked for a company called Sunoco Products Company, and they mixed chemicals to make paper. And my father was one of the supervisors in that department to mix the chemicals to make paper. So I said chemical engineer, which means
I got you.
Somebody mixing chemicals to make another project, another product.
You grew up in a segregated part of town?
Yes, and I still live in the house that I grew up in.
Where the white people in that town? Across the railroad tracks?
Across the tracks. You're absolutely right. Well, actually, I live across the tracks. The tracks run through the middle of the black community, but I live on the side of the tracks. I grew up on the side of the tracks that the white people grew up on. But the demarcation line was not the tracks. The demarcation line was a street. So I live in the black community. The tracks, of course, separated the black community from itself. And there was a demarcation line because that's where the railroad tracks were. But the demarcation line for whites and blacks was a street. It was called Sumter Street. So if you lived on our side of Sumter Street, you lived in the black community. If you lived on the other side of Sumter Street, on the north side of Sumter Street, you lived in the white community. And we lived on the south side of Sumter Street.
Did you go to a segregated high school?
Absolutely. I went to a segregated. I mean, there were no integrated schools when I was in high school. I graduated from high school in 1960, so there were no integrated high school.
Could you imagine that the white school had more something than the black school?
Not imagine, I knew it. There was no imagination.
It was a better looking building.
The building was not necessarily better looking. There was a difference in the pay for teachers. There was a difference in the supplies that our schools got. We would get books when at the end of the school year, whatever books you had as a student was turned in. The next year, we would get books that had white kids' names in them.
Oh, really?
But what I have to say is that the high school that I went to, although it was a segregated high school, we had some of the most dedicated teachers, having been an educator myself, that we've ever seen. People quite often comment to me, they'd like to know what's in the water in Hartsville. The town I live in is Hartsville, because there are more successful African American people from this community in South Carolina than almost any other community in the state.
Really?
And we all went to the same high school.
Wait, what? I mean, and so that's just black on black love that did that. Would you say?
And caring about who we were going to be and how we were going to live.
When you hear the stories, and I hear the stories that growing up back in those days, it was a family that raised the kids. And as a result of that, if you did wrong, the lady down the street gave you a whooping, and then you know you got a whooping when you got home.
That may be back in the day for some people, but that's today for most people, for most African Americans, I think, especially the ones in my community. Any child in my community I can speak to. I have no children, but I can speak to, and I have help. I can admonish any children. And yes, it was a community thing. On the street that I live on, there were 4 families with children. Any of our parents, any one of the parents or families could say to the kids, you know, what's going wrong. They could just talk to us, and our parents would not be angry. Of course, that's a lot of what's going on in a lot of communities today.
Yeah.
People don't want you talking to their children, but in my community, that's not necessarily so.
Growing up, did you automatically know your place in society as a black person compared to a white person?
No, because I was very protected. I didn't interact with white people growing up.
Okay.
I didn't know some of the kinds of issues that other African American children experience. I didn't have those experiences. I knew that white people, you know, had privileges. As a senior in high school, although we went to separate high school, I had a white girlfriend.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
we didn't play together. We didn't go out together or anything, but we were friends. So some of the experience that other African Americans have experienced was not my experience.
Did you ever see anything racist happen where the KKK came through town or anything like that?
I never saw that in my town. It may have happened, but I never saw it. The town that I live in is a very progressive community. It is also one of the richest towns of its size in the Southeast.
Really?
So a lot of things that may have been experienced in other communities, we didn't experience here.
What made your town so special? I mean, was there something in the background that did this? Some black people fought back, or there was some white people that were more sympathetic or something? What do you think that was?
Well, one thing is we have a Fortune 500 company in our town. We have a college in our town. And although the college was it was a private segregated school at that time. But the other thing is, one of the things about our town is, one of the things that says what a community is how people are employed. In our town, there is a payroll every day of the week. Somebody has a payroll every day of the week in our town. So that, again, African Americans in our town, where there was a big middle class African American because of the Fortune 500 company, because people worked there. It was a big employer, and it was a big employer of African Americans. Both my parents worked there.
Okay, so that, as like in what happened in Detroit, because we had the automobile, black people were making a little bit of more money than other places, which meant that we had more stores and shops and maybe dressed a little bit better and the whole shot. That might be the same in your scenario.
And what I like to say is that everybody had a house with a car in the garage.
But do you ever go to the rural part of your area? And
well, of course, when we worked on the farms, we
farm,
went
yeah.
to rural parts, and many of my friends lived in rural communities because everybody in my town and in the rural part of my town went to the same high school. So all of my friends were from rural, from in town, wherever. But a lot of the people who lived in the rural parts of our community worked at Sunoco. So they were like us. I mean, but there were people who owned farms, there were people who owned their own businesses. So I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a lower, I mean, there were people who were suffering at the time, but that wasn't my experience.
I got you.
And that's not to say that my family was any better. I mean,
I got you.
in my family, like I said, there were 6 of us. Both of our parents worked. And when we got big enough, we all got jobs to maintain so that we could, you know.
Was there some social societies, organizations that, you know, the elite people went to, the black elite people went to, that you wanted debutantes or anything like that?
Well, of course, there were always the Black fraternities and sororities because you had teachers and other people who were educators who had gone to college and had, you know, had pledged. So there were the debutante balls and all of those, and we participated in all of that. There was the Masonic temples, and you know, there were all of those in our community. So you participated in what, you know, whatever you wanted to participate in.
Yeah, I got you. I love it. That's a beautiful thing. So then you went to college.
Absolutely.
Where'd you go?
Well, first I went to Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama.
Which is how far from where you grew up?
Alabama is, I guess it's about an 8-hour drive.
Okay.
Talladega is HBCU.
Yeah.
And I got a scholarship to go. And so I went for my first semester. I stayed there 1 semester. And then I went to Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And that's where I graduated.
Yeah. You got all grades, you got good grades in high school and that kind of thing?
I was number 3 in my class in high school.
Man, tell it, sister. That's all right. And so you, if I may, I guess as we talk in that at that commission that you work at, or that you're the chairman of, what's the premise of it again?
Again, the mission is to identify and promote the historic contributions of African Americans to the state of South Carolina. It is our job to raise the awareness. South Carolina is one of the most historic states in the country.
Yes.
People come here all the time just for our culture and for our history. So in 1993, we decided, we being a group of us working together, I mean, who happened to be at a meeting together, you know, decided that not enough was being done by the state to preserve the rich contributions of African Americans to the state of South Carolina. So we lobbied the General Assembly to create the South Carolina African American Heritage. At that time, we were called a council. And so we were created by legislation. At that time, South Carolina was the only state in the Union that had a state-created African American Heritage Commission.
Really? Okay. I mean, what, do you have a website, and what kind of information is on that website and that kind of thing?
We have a website. The commission is affiliated with the South Carolina Department of Archives and History. So we are on their website, but we have a nonprofit organization that supports the work of the commission. And that's wegoja.org. That's WEGOJA.org. And you can go there and find out all the work of the commission and what we do.
I love it. I love it. Is there a question or something that I have not asked you that, you know, some note that you want people to know?
Well, a couple of things. I'd like the people, several of our projects, and if you go to the website, you will see everything,
Yeah.
are noted. As a matter of fact, we just got an award for one project yesterday. It's called the Green Book of South Carolina.
Yeah. Okay.
The Green Book of South Carolina is a homage to the original Green Book, but the Green Book of South Carolina is a listing of over 350 cultural and historic sites in South Carolina. If you go to the website greenbookofsc.com, you will see what we have done. Also, last year, in the middle of COVID, one of our members decided that it was real important that we capture the voices of African Americans in South Carolina about how COVID affects them. And so we have another project called Black Carolinians Speak. And if you go to the Green Book of South Carolina, you can click on Black Carolinians Speak on that link. So and originally when we started the project, we had no funding for it. We were just saying, let's do this. But I am pleased to report that the 1772 Foundation out of Connecticut has funded Black Carolinians Speak at a $75,000 level.
That's good. I guess two more questions. When you talk about growing up in there, are there some noted Black businesses in your community? A Black hotel or bank or anything like that that you remember?
Funny you should mention, because I just got approval for a South Carolina historical marker for the Huff Hotel, which was the only Black hotel in my town. It happened to be owned by my father's best friend. It's one block over from my house. I can look at it, and we will be installing a South Carolina historical marker at that site in May.
And you remember when it was open and so on and so forth?
Well, I don't remember when it opened. It opened way before.
When it opened, but during it when it was open.
But during the time that it was open, yes, it served as hotel. It served as a community store. The owners served as parents to all the kids in the community. And their son, their oldest son, was my father's best friend. So I could always go and say, hey, they were like my grandparents. So yes, right. I remember very much about that.
Was there a Black bank or a funeral home or that kind of thing?
Oh, there were 3 Black funeral homes in our community. No Black bank. But there were the funeral home directors, of course, they're in every community, and we had 3 in our community.
What about the Black grocery store or something like that, or convenience store, whatever you all call it?
Well, we call them, we had several of those in our community. We had a Black business district in our community.
Oh, okay.
And in that district was the pharmacy, the dentist, restaurant, cleaners. What else was there? As a matter of fact, we're looking now at kind of restoring that district and marking it historical.
What was the name of it? Did it have a name?
Well, there was no name for it. It was it's 6th Street. It's the street that runs through the town. Okay. And the Black business district was on 6th Street.
Is there one noted Black business person or politician that comes out of that town?
How long do you have? We have a list of, as I said, Hartsville is one of the has some of the most successful African Americans of any town of its size in the state. So we have we have professional football players, we have professional baseball players, doctors, lawyers. One of my high school classmates, Dr. Sherman James, is an internationally known epidemiologist. You're talking to one.
Exactly.
So
I was going to say that.
So yes. So we have a number of people from this community, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that, but I wouldn't want to put one against the other.
Right.
So we have a lot of people, yes.
Do you ever wish that you, for whatever reason, grew up in the North?
I lived in the Northeast in New Jersey for 20 years. And for all of those people, and I want them to hear this, all of those people who live in the North and the Northeast, I chose to come back to South Carolina because I didn't like living on top of myself. I didn't like having to drive my car and park it 50 miles from wherever I had to go. For those, we live in better housing. We have more community. So when people start telling me about, well, you lived in the South, listen. One day I worked in Manhattan in New York for a couple of years. And one day someone said to me, well, did you buy those clothes in South Carolina? I was like, everybody in South Carolina is not dumb, stupid, and crazy. We are all intelligent people. We have resources, and when we come to the North, we bring those experiences with us. And that's why when we go to the North, we're able to do better than average.
I love it.
Right.
Tell them like it is. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a holiday or a festival in your town that people can come to, to sell, anything like that?
We have the Bluegrass Festival. We have the Jazz Festival. What else do we have? I live 10 miles from the Darlington racetrack, which is one of the biggest races in the country. So we have all kinds of things. As I said, this is a rich community.
Love it.
The median income, I just heard that yesterday. The median income for my town is $40,000. That's not a lot of money, but that's a median income.
Yeah, I got you. I love it. Everybody, this is what we do on Strong Inspirations. This lady right here, she's telling it, she's giving it to us straight. She's like, hey, forget all the myths,
right?
All the misnotions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, y'all do love the sweet tea. Do you drink sweet tea?
I love sweet tea, but I've come to enjoy and when I pull up to a restaurant sometimes people say, what? I like Arnold Palmer's because I like sweet tea with lots of lemon.
Yeah.
And so I mix my sweet tea with lemonade.
Yeah. And I don't know, this might be crazy because I might be off. Gullah Geechee is not in your area either.
I don't live in the Gullah Geechee corridor, but I'm very familiar with it. It is a very rich culture. And of course, we cherish those experiences. But I don't live in the Gullah Geechee corridor is 40 miles inland from the ocean, and I live about 70 miles from the ocean.
I got you. Well, hey, I thank you so very much for coming on Strong Inspirations. Because everybody out, we dispelling the myths.
Okay.
Don't believe the hype. In her town, Black folks run that town. Do y'all have a Black mayor?
No, we don't. We have a white mayor. Our mayor and council, 7 people. We have 3 Black African American. We have 3 African American councilmen. As a matter of fact, I am the campaign chair for one of the African Americans who's running for city council right now. We have 3 African American city councilmen and 3 white city council people, and our mayor is white.
Yeah, have you ever had a
we have somebody Black running for mayor in November. 2.
Oh, is that right?
2 African Americans are running for mayor in November.
Okay, we're gonna keep an eye on this. I thank you so very much for coming on the channel. I just find some people and try to come up with some questions. I thank you so very much, everybody. We're going to post the website to the commission on the description. Follow them. Let's go down there and visit. Let's go down there and have a good time.
And follow us on Facebook, South Carolina African American Heritage Commission on Facebook, and Wegosia Foundation on Facebook.
We're gonna put all that in the agreement. We're gonna watch out on that mayoral race, and I thank you so very much for coming on the channel. And so to you, my sister, I say with all sincerity, stay strong, stay safe, stay on your ground. We love that you the chairperson and you directing that thing down there and making it happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.